One of the things I talk about a lot with government and why I'm a big advocate for limited government is I think when you get this big bloated government, they're just looking for things to do. They're just looking for ways to make the lives of law-abiding, hardworking people more difficult. And this week on Sundays with Subscribers, we had a really frustrating example of that as told by a man named John Bennett, who is a South Seattle property owner. He owns properties and has done a lot to redevelop the neighborhood of Georgetown. So we want to get into some of the beefs that he's had with the city of Seattle and how it illustrates the point I was making about big government. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter because they always have all these good opportunities to get involved in pushing back against the crazy. Speaking of, so if you've ever been in like south of the stadium, so Georgetown, if you're not familiar, it's kind of like by where the Rainier Brewery is, you know, when you drive along I-5. It's a cool neighborhood. It's got this cool, unique charm to it. But like a lot of areas south of the stadiums and, you know, downtown Pioneer Square, it has a lot of homelessness issues as well. So John Bennett, he's someone I've known for a long time. You know, we sometimes just chat about politics in Seattle and the crazy and all that. But he's a property owner in the Georgetown neighborhood, also a little bit in West Seattle. And he always is sending me pics of like the sidewalks just filled with homeless tents and stuff. And the frustration, obviously, as someone who has put a lot of effort and money into trying to make this a vibrant neighborhood and trying to contribute to that neighborhood, and then to see, you know, all the graffiti, all the tents, can't even use the sidewalks, city doesn't respond, got even worse after the All-Star game. Remember when the city's like, oh, let's clear all those tents from around the stadiums, and they're acting like, oh, we didn't do that for the All-Star game. Well, where did those tents end up? A lot of them ended up in Georgetown because they didn't get these people help. They just pushed them further to the south. And so there's been a ton of frustrations from not only John Bennett, from other business owners there. There's not a lot of residents in residential homes or anything in that area. There are some, but not a ton. So, you know, they see these huge problems, the homelessness crisis spilling out, thefts that are happening as a result of that, substance abuse. You know, the infrastructure down there is just crumbling. It's like an ignored neighborhood. So you got crumbling sidewalks and all this crap and potholes. So it's like, you know, the city needs to be paying attention to, there's a lot of issues that are glaring that the city needs to be paying attention to in the Georgetown neighborhood and in SoDo, for instance. But what is the city paying attention to instead? What is the big government of Seattle with all their employees and their billions of dollars paying attention to? Well, going after hardworking, law-abiding people like John Bennett. So as he's looking at all this homeless all around him, he's getting citations from the city for ridiculous stuff. One of them was a plant that actually happened to be on city property that was just growing ever so slightly over like a sidewalk walking area. So what happens to poor John Bennett? Well, he gets a citation for it. He gets a citation for a plant that, again, is on city property. So like, shouldn't the city trim that plant? And it's not impeding. It is no more impeding the flow than all the tents that are blocking sidewalks. And to make matters worse, it was in this area that there's really not pedestrian traffic. So it's not this urgent and present problem that's interfering with other people's lives. Now, John Bennett could easily go and just be like, okay, I'm just going to trim that because like, I'm not, I'm going to trim it. No big deal. I obey the laws. But it's understandable that there's this deep sense of frustration from him when he gets this citation and then looks down the street at all the homeless tents blocking the sidewalks, or, looks at the crumbling sidewalks where you can barely walk on it and the city isn't going to fix that. But John Bennett damn sure better trim back this hedge or whatever it is. And this is far from the only example. He had a huge beef with the city over a sandwich board that he put up outside one of his restaurants, and the city came. It's like, you have to take that down, and they were going to fine him, and he tried to fight over it. Like, this thing's been up for 27 years. Why are you going after my sandwich board? It's not impeding anyone. And meanwhile, all these other things are just falling short. And Nicole?
Oh, I was going to say, and he didn't cut that bush back after they fined him for cutting back some branches off a tree.
Yes. So
he didn't do this after he already got fined for cutting something else that he wasn't supposed to.
Yeah, because it wasn't that he didn't notice that the vegetation was creeping in. But as Nicole points out, one of the things he told us, I'm going to play a clip from our interview in a moment, is he had cut some branches back that were overhanging. And the city was threatening to fine him like tens of thousands of dollars for doing that. So of course he's like, well, I'm not touching
Right.
vegetation, trees, bushes, shrubs, whatever it is. Like, I'm not touching it because I don't want to get fined tens of thousands of dollars. It's like, well, no, we're going to fine you for not touching it. We're going to fine you for cutting it. We're going to fine you for not cutting it. So just ridiculous stuff. And then there was this other example where he's just, again, trying to beautify things, trying to do his thing as a business owner, as a property owner. And he all of a sudden starts getting like harassed by inspectors, and the story about this just made Nicole and we had no other choice but to laugh because it was just so ridiculous.
I had another thing in Georgetown.
Yeah.
So I had a scissor lift out on the street, and I was painting and fixing up the exterior of my building, and I got a ticket because I did not get a street use permit. Or it was a street use permit? Yeah, I think it was.
Oh, man.
It was a street use permit. And so, of course, I got rid of the scissor lift, and then that went away. And then I got another one the next time I was working. I kept getting, and then I realized that the inspector goes to the coffee shop right next to the building every morning. And so every morning I'm up there early with this thing. So finally I talked to him. I said, what is going on here? I mean, I got to fix my building. He said, well, you need to use a street use permit. You need to rent that City of Seattle sidewalk belongs to the City of Seattle. You have to lease that from us to do your work. And I said, and I'm standing there right there talking to this person from, I guess it was SDOT. I said, okay, I guess I understand that. I said, how do I do that? And he said, well, you go downtown and you get a permit and you pay it and all that kind of thing. And I said, okay. And then when the person was leaving, they also said, also, by the way, I want to tell you, on the sidewalk on the side of the building here, it's all cracked. You'll need to replace that. That's a hazard. Wow. And I said, whoa, now hold on one second. It's like, either you own the sidewalk and I rent it from you, or I own the sidewalk and I fix it. You can't have the best of both worlds.
What do you say to that?
He said, well, no, that's the law. You have to maintain our sidewalk. And I said, well, I'll do one or the other. I'll either be on my scissor lift for free and fix the sidewalk, or I'll pay for the scissor lift and you fix the sidewalk.
You guys, I just can't. You got to watch that whole interview with John. He's great. unDividedPod.com, unDividedPod.com. It was on Sundays with subscribers yesterday. But does that not speak to, that is the perfect example of what I have been talking about big government. You have all these huge crises that you've let completely get out of control despite all your spending, despite all the resources you have at your availability to address these things urgently. And you're sending out people and you're busy harassing people like John Bennett, who wants to follow the rules, who thinks he is, who's trying to, and who you're just picking and poking at. For what reason? And one of the things that bothered me about that story you just told with the lift and, is he keeps getting all these like citations and warnings. And he's wondering why. Specifically when he's working at this location, well, one of the inspectors apparently goes to that coffee shop. And so he'd just sit there at the coffee shop and, take note of all the stuff that John Bennett was doing that was, bothersome, as opposed to going out, hey, having a conversation like, hey, I get coffee here. I'm an inspector for the city. Just wanted to let you know that this is out of regulation or whatever it is. And I'm sure John Bennett would have rectified it. But instead, behind quietly, it's like, oh, let's send him stuff. And then I'll just keep using my perch at the coffee shop to spy on this guy. This is insane. I would be fine. With if we were living in this pristine city where the city government was taking, great care and concern to make sure all the laws were being enforced, and it was, everything was being upkept and all of that, and there were no homeless tents and encampments encroaching on right-of-ways. And then they wanted to say, yeah, you need to cut this, you need to trim this back, or you need to cut that, or you need to permit for that. I'd still be like, God, that's big government just intruding in people's lives. But I would feel better about it. But that's not the case. Big government ignores the big problems, but focuses on the small problems very, very well. A big thank you to John Bennett for being willing to push back against some of these things and the ridiculousness and share that with us, because this is happening way more than we know. And until people come and tell us about it, when he was sending me that, I was like, John, you have to come on. That's crazy. And so I appreciated him taking the time. Wild.
Such a jerk? That's
Why
what I want to know.
Jerk? Be nice. But it also feeds into this larger issue with the erosion of law and order, where I think there was a long period of time, for instance, $30 car tabs. People are like, we voted for this forever, a million times. It keeps getting overturned or whatever it is. And I'm trying to obey the law, but the government's doing everything it can to make our lives more difficult. And you're really going to give me a ticket for not having car tabs when I don't want to pay for them? Right. Or, with the pursuit law. So now we're letting all these violent criminals just drive off, do that, but then we get pulled over and get speeding ticket, and it's like the one mistake we've made in 10 years, and now our insurance goes up and our premiums go up. It's crazy. It's really sticking it to average hardworking people who are trying to live within the rules that society lays out, and then allowing and encouraging people who aren't trying at all to live within those societal norms, encouraging their behavior. And it is simply not fair.
It is not. I just can't believe you can't have a conversation with somebody, say, hey, did you know that brush is kind of getting over? Would you mind trimming that back for us?
Yeah.
He probably would have been like, sure.
Sure, yeah, I'll go do that today. I'll go do it myself.
Citation. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and the money from those citations goes to feed into the big government that's going to continue to go out there and harass people while ignoring all the major crises that we have. If that's not an argument for limited government, I just really don't know what it is.
I don't know what would be either.
All right, Nicole, thank you. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration. There's some media outlets at work trying to vilify my friends at Future 42 for trying to save this state of ours. Hell no. I'm very proud to be an ambassador for Future 42, and I love the work that they're doing. And we appreciate them being a sponsor on our show.